Welcome to another episode of the Creative Psychotherapist podcast. This is your host, Raina Lombardi, and I'm so happy that you continue to listen week to week as we share stories about and from art and other creative arts therapists from around the world, really. And today we'll be sharing a conversation with art therapist Linda Turner. She's been an art therapist in New York City for 20 years and she considers herself to be an artist, but she also had a long-standing career working in product and textile designs. And she kind of shares this beautiful way that she was able to continue to keep her foot in the world of design while embodying her new career identity as a therapist and eventually adding on some career coaching components to that to help students coming out of design school or while they're in design school to help them figure out their kind of career path. And she also is going to be presenting about how to find a job at the upcoming Expressive Therapy Summit. So you can check that out. And one of the things that we talk about is how she's maintained a private practice um, through many years of her career as an art therapist and how it's supported her in a variety of ways. And now she's kind of pulling out and only working full time in private practice and making room for other opportunities in her life. Some of the things that I think will resonate for listeners is like how she talks about giving yourself permission to earn more as a therapist, which I think many topics always bring up feelings for people, a variety of different feelings for people. Um, and she also shares, some tips on, how to go about it successfully. And so I hope you enjoy this conversation with myself and Linda.
The Creative Psychotherapist is the official podcast of the Creative Clinicians Corner, a practice-building resource for creative psychotherapists. TCP Podcast is the cast for creative, expressive, and experiential-focused psychotherapists curious to learn how to design, build, and scale a thriving private practice. Your host, Raina Lombardi, interviews successful therapists about the tools and strategies they have used to develop creative-focused practices. They also talk about the products, services, and side hustles they have developed using their knowledge and creativity to enhance their therapy practices, make a greater impact in their communities, and diversify their income streams. Welcome. Now here's your host, Raina Lombardi.
Thanks for listening to The Creative Psychotherapist. I'm your host, Raina Lombardi, and I am very excited to welcome my next guest. Her name is Linda Turner. Linda is an LCAT and ATR-BC and has been a New York City-based art psychotherapist for 20 years. She's also a mixed media artist and painter who, prior to a midlife career change, was a home products and textile designer. Over the past 10 years, Linda concurrently ran a half-time private practice while working as an adjunct assistant professor / career counselor at the Fashion Institute of Technology, a position she recently left to move into full-time art psychotherapy and coaching practice, to work less and to spend more time creating art. During the first 10 years as an art therapist, Linda was hired to introduce art therapy into a collaborative program between the Department of Education and Catholic Charities. It was a program that assisted underserved youth in obtaining their GED diplomas. She entered as a part-time employee and ultimately became a clinical supervisor. She worked for the Chinatown YMCA after 9/11 and also introduced art therapy services to this population and at the Creative Center doing art with adult cancer patients. Linda served on the New York board, the board of New York Coalition of Creative Arts Therapies, NYCCAT, for 7 years. With a commitment to lifelong learning, Linda has a certificate from the Kent Institute in Trauma and Creative Arts Therapies, is level 3 accelerated experiential dynamic psychotherapy, level 1 internal family systems, and has a certificate in integral somatic psychotherapy and has trained with CTI, the Coaches Training Institute. She lives in Brooklyn with her partner and their 2 cats while working virtually, and she can't wait to get back into her office in the Union Square area of New York City. Welcome, Linda. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So it sounds like you have done a really great job at creating balance between your 2 careers and almost like blending and merging them. Can you share with listeners kind of what led you to leave the field of design and pursue art therapy, and how you're kind of able to weave the 2 together in some respects?
Sure. So I always had a commitment to activism and to making a difference in the world, even when I was a designer. And I started doing I always did volunteer work. I always was active in some way or another, from protesting nuclear weapons in the 80s to working with homeless shelters, camping out with women in parks to make a statement about homelessness, all kinds of things. And at a point I said that I chose that I wanted to do something that was actually merging my career more with my social consciousness and my interest in creativity and making a difference for people.
Mhm.
And I had learned about art therapy, which I had not heard about, when I was at the undergraduate level or, in high school or anything. And I started pursuing it just to see if it was something that was interesting. And I will share that one of the things that was really meaningful to me, a friend of mine and I, who worked as designers together, collaborated with a friend of hers who was getting a master's in museum education. And we went into a few different environments and worked with kids on it was about hat making and exploring who we were as children. And so we did this in a few different environments with the Henry Street Settlement. And we also did it with a foster care agency up in Nyack, New York. And we went in to that agency and we went into these kids' homes, basically. And what we found, my friend and I, was that we did not have a clue as to how to work with these children, as opposed to the children who we were going to Henry Street Settlement, which was an after-school program, and we were introducing the arts. There was a tremendous amount of trauma. And I said, if I'm going to work with kids and do these kinds of things and be with people who've had traumatic histories, then I need to know what I'm doing. And that, I think, was pivotal for me, not to mention, of course, the way that I had always had this commitment out of my personal use of art as a healing mechanism and how it always helped me, right? So I decided to go to the School of Visual Arts, which at the time had a certificate program, and I did a year there while I was designing, and then ended up going to Pratt, who has a program where you can continue working at the same time as going to graduate school, which I needed to do because I was already in my mid-late 30s. And, And so I started, and I actually had planned to have a dual career. And then I got carpal tunnel and had to stop designing. which I always see as a gift, because now I'm okay. I can't do certain repetitive things, but in many ways I'm fine. And it kind of thrust me fully into
Art
art therapy.
therapy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
it's kind of a almost like a gift to yourself. You didn't know that it was, gonna be um there for you.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. And so obviously you stopped designing, but you still continued to have your foot in the world of design while at the same time doing art therapy through your affiliation at the Design Institute.
Mhm.
How did you navigate that transition?
Well, it was actually quite fortuitous. I was working at Catholic Charities, where I had worked for 10 years, and was also doing my own art,
Mm.
at which I was able to do. I couldn't use my hand for about 2 years in any kind of, yeah, it was quite a,
Wow.
yeah, it was difficult. And I got the use of my hand back. And for a long time, I could only do very loose creative things, but now I can do a wide range of creative work for myself. But after 10 years of Catholic Charities, I thought, okay, it's time to earn a living, because I was in a really wonderful role at Catholic Charities, but I wasn't making enough to live on. And so I decided I want to start a private practice, and I want to do something that is meaningful, but I don't want to do counseling. Now, I don't know that I would have gotten the position, but there happened to have been a counseling position at the same time at FIT. And I
Mm.
decided that it was not the direction to go. So there also happened to be a career counseling position. And I thought, what a wonderful merging of my two experiences, excuse me, working with young people, and not all ages of people, but a lot of students and the alumni, in doing work towards their profession, a profession I had a great love for and commitment. And FIT is my alma mater. It's where I got an associate's and bachelor's. And also, so I'd be giving back counseling.
Mm.
And at the same time, I would have space to do the clinical work that I was wanting to do.
Yeah. So I know for a lot of people that are looking to go out into practice, one of the things that comes up is this voice of like, well, there's already so many people in practice out there, and you have created, maintained, and grown a practice in the one of the biggest cities in the world. Um, what do you think really helps you to be successful in such a competitive area? Because there are so many therapists and so many art therapists in particular in New York because of all the different grad programs and people stay, and it's much more vibrant community there than where I'm at in Florida and other regions of the country.
Um, so I think commitment to commitment is really what
Mm.
it takes. It's interesting. It's a little bit of an aside to what you're saying, but I worked with many students who wanted to become art therapists. They went to FIT perhaps for art, fine arts. In fact, my last semester, I did a workshop on entering art therapy, and over 40 people came virtually to this workshop from FIT, which I thought was amazing. And what I always tell people is, if you're really committed to this work, if it feels right to you as it did to me, then don't let anything stop you. And I am a big believer there's room for all of us, right?
Mhm.
I'm not a person who's like, oh no, this is my client. It's like, yeah, if it's great if this is a fit, and if I'm not right for somebody, there's someone out there. Creating this supportive environment of clinicians, psychiatrists, colleagues, friends outside the box of our field, there are many people who need support and who really want to use alternative, non-traditional ways of growing, healing, and having their life be different. So I sincerely believe there's room for us all.
I do too. I do too. Um,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how you went about creating from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
that commitment. I do think it when you're going into private practice, it has to be for both, right? Both the
Mm-hmm.
commitment to the work that you're going to do with the client, but then also the commitment to the work that you have to do on the self in order to overcome some of those limiting beliefs and things that come up when we're pushing our boundary of what's possible or what we've never done before.
Yes, yes. Well, it's interesting. I made a trade. I studied coaching, as you mentioned, at Coaches Training Institute, which is a well-known and renowned institute, back in 2007, because I was a little burnt out on being a therapist at that time. That's how I became a clinical supervisor. I said, I really need a change. And I mentioned that because I had somebody in my world who was a marketing person who needed some relationship coaching. So we did a trade. And it was amazing because they really taught me to think about and create a plan for what I was looking to do. And that was really important, was not to think I could just figure it out on my own, but to get support from people who knew how to make this happen. And it was quite interesting because 10 years ago, a lot of people in our particular area didn't have websites. And so this marketing coach said, buy arttherapyny.com. And I was like, no, I can't do that. There's nyarttherapy.org is the New York Art Therapy, and I was very worried about that and wanting to get it right. And she's like, no, you have to do this. And that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
that was number one. Because being willing to take a risk, because back then for me, it might be very different risks that people are taking now.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about how much money I wanted to earn, how much I needed to earn, who I wanted to work with, the different kinds of people, what I wanted to be doing, and networking. I am an avid fan of connecting to people, talking to people, sharing what I know, finding out what they do. And those, and the website was a real gift. And I will tell you, I had a colleague, friend, somebody we took courses together who was a doctor. And I have to say, that was an incredible opportunity, because this person who really was a caring human being referred people to me, not as an art therapist, but as a therapist who she knew and trusted. Right. And so really having resources that make sense for who you are, people that know you, right? It's wonderful to be out there and networking, and really creating communities of people who trust you is critical. And again, website. At the time, I would say 50% of my business came through my website for years. For the first about 8 years, 50% came through website, 50% came through people in the world who I knew, who knew me, some we referred to each other. So all of those things, and really thinking about your finances. Right. I was have a spreadsheet of every penny I spend, every penny I earn, looking at what makes sense. So, and trusting your value. I find in particular art therapists or creative arts therapists, at least until recently, would undersell ourselves in terms of what we're willing to charge.
Yeah.
Because I'm not quite sure why, but I remember also attending a workshop on finance maybe 7 years ago, and it was a game changer for me, because I was still, I'd been doing it a few years. I had an okay practice with FIT, and and we had to go around and everybody was talking about what it was that was in the way of them earning.
Mm.
And so there was a young woman, and I say young, she was probably in her mid-20s. And I believe she had a permit as a marriage and family therapist. And the woman who was leading the workshop said to her, maybe she was part of her practice, I'm not sure. She said to her, there is no reason you shouldn't be charging $150 a session. And at the time, I think I was charging maybe $130, but I wanted to, or $120, and I wanted to be $140. And here I had 20 years of my own therapy, and I had been a therapist for, almost 15 years. And so I was like, all right, you know what? I'm allowed to make more.
Mm.
And what I do with sliding scale, and I'm happy to talk about any of that, but what we do sort of behind closed doors or with the people that come to us is one thing, but as a part of a marketplace, I got that I was underselling myself. And literally, fortuitously, somebody called me as I was leaving the workshop, and they said, I'm looking for a therapist. And I said, great. They said, what's your fee? I said, $140. They said, okay, no problem. And that was it. That was like, okay, I'm allowed to earn. It's okay to earn.
Yes.
I have worked in systems where I wasn't earning for long enough. It's okay. And that was really, so all of those things have been helpful in me becoming, feeling satisfied with my practice, doing it.
Yeah. I think that is a sign of your practice being successful, is that there is personal satisfaction there for yourself, right?
Mhm.
That is successful, even if it's small, right? It could be small, it could be large, but when we feel satisfied with the work that we're doing, that's really important. And I'm grateful for you sharing that, because I think that a lot of us, and not just art therapists, but therapists in general,
Mhm.
there's so much shame around money, and it comes up and people are afraid, or they hear those kinds of statements like, you didn't get in this for the money, or you're creating barriers for people to access services, and all of these beliefs that keep us playing really small, that in order for us to really be able to have a practice that remains open, we kind of have to get over, or figure out a way, because you can't survive and keep a business open and take care of your life on $35 a session. Eh,
Right.
You're going to be doing 60 sessions a week, and that is just way too much, right?
Right. I mean, what you said is, it does create barriers. So I felt like I was doing a lot of giving back at FIT in terms of the way, what I offered and provided. And now that I'm on my own for a big 2.5 months almost, I am looking for other ways to really fully give back, because I do think that is important as
Mhm.
also a part of being in this work.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's about intentionality. If
Hmm.
we're really intentional about what we're setting out to do, um, we can create a plan that allows us to do both, and to take
Hmm.
care of ourselves, but also to give back in different ways. And as you pointed out, most of us have sacrificed a lot in our
Hmm.
early jobs,
Yeah.
at taking salaries that other professions would laugh at, if they had gone to school for the amount of time and all of the training that we do. And obviously, like all the extra training that many of us therapists put ourselves through.
Right, right. And I didn't mean, I'm sort of grappling with just the barriers and don't let them stop you, because I agree with that as well. And I appreciate what you said. How do we do both? How do we, we have many of us given back in a way
Yeah.
that, made it really tough at the beginning. And, it is okay to earn.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And, it is okay in the marketplace that we are in, each of us. And, I think the marketplace where you are is different than the marketplace where I am.
Of course.
What that means in terms of numbers, what that means in terms of amounts that we can earn. But it is important to, to trust that that it is okay. And in fact, to be able to teach people, we're not looking to teach people, to trust that it is okay for us to live a fulfilled life that's financial, as well as emotional, as well as intellectual and creative, and to be able to have our clients experience that as a truth within us for them and themselves.
I love that. I love the way you said that mirroring and modeling, that ability to empower yourself. Because if we don't do that, nobody's going to do it for us, right? The systems
Mm-hmm.
are designed to say, oh, that's not possible, that kind of thing. And I know early on, I wasn't intentional. I was like, okay, I'm in a group practice. This is what the owner is, charging. That's what I'm
Mm.
charging. And, it wasn't until I like went out fully on my own that I was like, okay, I really need to figure this out. And like you said, create that spreadsheet that goes through and looks at every incoming piece and outgoing piece, and then figure out how can I adjust so that I can see clients, or how many clients can I see at a different fee, um, and still be able to maintain what I need financially to sustain the business, but also to pay my salary. And, if you're just in practice by yourself, you have to pay for all those trainings that you do, and all the extras. So,
Yes, you can't see me, but there's a lot of head shaking going on. Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And not to mention, at this point, or at this moment in time, my beautiful new unused office. you know, yeah.
Yes, right. Paying for a space that you're not regularly using, is hard. I know for me, I'm so close to my office that it's easier for me to come here and work. I do sometimes work from home, but usually I'll come into the office even if all my appointments are online, just because it's a quiet space. My dog's
Mhm.
not barking. I don't have to worry about my husband being around or whatever. So, but
Right.
but for a lot of people, it just makes more sense to stay home and keep the office. Um, Hopefully, you'll be able to go back to in person soon.
I really hope so. I actually, interestingly, and I don't know if this is interesting to listeners, but I created with a group of colleagues vision boards of
Mm,
what we want for our career, and did this about 6 or 8 months ago. And it was very exciting to me to see that many of the things that were on my vision board were things I've already done, which were
mm,
my work with clients, arts and creative based workshops and doing and creating art. And one of the things that I had decided when I was getting ready to leave FIT, and I knew that I was going to be doing that for a while. So I was in planning for this transition. I decided I wanted a bigger office because one of my key goals has been to do in-person arts-based workshops. So I had all this, so I have this hope and desire to be able to go and start working out of my bigger office so that I can do some of that in person. Because it's a real part of my commitment. And I know we can't see it, but I mean, other people can't see it, but this, I was showing Rena my vision board, because it's a way of visually, for those of us that are creative arts therapists, putting down what it is that we want our life to look like. And I found that and not just as an esoteric exercise, but actually as an intent. And it was interesting when I did this, as I said, many things were in my life already, but what wasn't was a bigger office. And that like sort of really catapulted me into, I'm going to look for a bigger office, and I got one. So
I love that. I love those exercises. At the beginning of this year, end of last year, beginning of this year, I decided not to go with a board, and instead I created a book. So it's a vision book, but it's made out of manila folders. So I did some bookbinding and put all the manila folders together. So each page represents like a different kind of area of my life that I am envisioning about, which I like, because then you can add pages as you realize you have some other inspiration, and the board just seems so limiting.
I so love that. You don't mind if I utilize that idea?
Yes,
that is brilliant. Yeah. I really like that. I mean, for this particular thing, which was career focused, career life, right? The integration, that worked for me, because I think what I was trying to do was integrate next steps, right? What do you do? Not just, and we talked a little bit about this. I'm an older clinician, so I'm looking to kind of slow down my life a little bit and really have more space to create. And so I was like, this board was useful to me to be able to integrate those things and see them in one space. And at the same time, I love what you're saying, because it creates the access to something bigger. So I'm going to try that next.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other thing that was nice about it is, because they're made out of manila file folders, it fits in my filing cabinet. And so I can continue to like pull it out and revisit it as often as I want, and it tucks neatly away, versus the big poster board, which, I mean, for some people they don't mind, or maybe they have room, but I just don't have room for it. So the folder thing seemed to work really well, and I'm going to continue to utilize that. The other thing I was thinking is, if I keep binding the folder together and adding more pages, before you know it, I'll have, basically documentation of the process unfolding year after year.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. Because you're right. I have several of them, and this one's about maybe 16 by 20. And I have some that are 10 by 12, and I have some that are, so I love the idea of the consistency of all. No, so it's an absolutely brilliant idea. I'm excited to try it and share it.
Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. So as you were saying, you're moving into a different season of your life, and you're slowing down a little bit, and you've transitioned now, and you've had your private practice which you worked in part-time for many, many years, and now you're kind of pushing out to doing that full-time. What does that look like for you full-time?
That's well, that's a wonderful question because I'm not 100% sure yet. And, I'll be curious to know in a year from now as I look back on it. I'm in the process of working that out. It's interesting because while I was at FIT, which was 22 hours a week,
Oh,
I was also seeing 15 to 18 private clients as my part-time practice. And for some people, that's their full-time practice. Though,
yeah.
yeah. So I eventually moved down to, I think, 14 to 15 clients because 18 was too many. And about a month before I left FIT, I decided to bring on new clients. And I think it's a time when people are really needing support. So I was able to bring on about 5 more clients in a very quick period of time. So I think I have about 20 clients now. And my ideal sitting here today is 20 to 24 client sessions a week. And right now, and it's feeling really good, though I don't think if I get up to 24 clients, I can do this, but to be able to see clients 3 days a week and and maybe 3.5 days a week, and then to create space for doing my art more. And as I said, I really am committed to workshops. And what I've been thinking about, and this was new, I hope it's okay to mention it here. I'm going to do a workshop at the Expressive Therapy Summit, which is really on job search. And it was an interesting thing because my 2 passions around workshops are community building, which I love doing, and well, really that's my passion around it, but in terms of workshops. But I told Barry, I said either community building or getting a job, and he said, I want the getting a job, but I want you to incorporate art. And I was thinking, job search, PowerPoint, resume, PowerPoint, networking down and dirty. And he said, no, we want it to be more. So I added in a whole art piece, and it's a 3-hour workshop. And I'm thinking now I have about 8 hours worth of material. So I don't know how that's going to go. But what it had me do was think, I'm going, maybe a thought I have and something I'm playing with is doing a career kind of coaching, maybe 4 to 6 week program, and it's going to absolutely be pay what you wish. It's not something I'm looking to do to make a living. It's something I see so many young people, particularly students who are graduating, some people who've been in the fields, but particularly young people who have no idea how to do this and to move into this field, or the creative fields in general. So I've sort of been toying with that as a thing that I can do. And it's also a thing I don't mind doing virtually, as opposed to the arts, like really arts community building, which I very much want to do in person. So my thinking sitting here today is to have 20 to 24 clients, to be able to do more art, and to do some workshops, including maybe if depending on, my thinking is that.
No, that sounds lovely. And I think a lot of people will really benefit from that. It's tough. It's a really tough transition from school into career life. And
Right.
yeah. And
Right.
if people
Right.
want to go out and create something themselves, like we're not prepared. We're not educated on that in our training programs,
Right.
how to create a practice or a business of our skills, right?
Right. Which is why people like you and some others are so, doing such important work in terms of teaching us how to be in the world. For me, this is all part of like doing what I feel, to sort of get back to your other question, doing what I feel is going to make me happy and give back. And how can I do that? And this particular piece of what I learned being a career counselor for 10 years is something that, that I just happen to be able to offer. So I think it could be a useful tool to, just to support people also. And I think it's really important for any students who are graduating to know that this universities do have these programs. I was at a university doing this, and we're very underutilized.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's wonderful. Good for people to know if they're listening and you're kind of in that crossroads of where you're at in school. Because I know I get a lot of people contacting me and asking me about art therapy. I always direct them to the podcast. And because it's helpful to hear from all of these different professionals about what they're doing and how they're doing it, because each one of us is creating something, creating a practice that's unique to us. And I think it's important that we do that. Going back to what you were saying, how do you create a business that creates the life that you want to live, that it's integrated into your life in a way that's meaningful and it allows you to live a meaningful life outside of work.
Yes.
You know, and that's something that's lacking. But
yes,
possible for us when we're creating our own business.
Yes. And one thing I want to really, emphasize is the balance, that you were getting at, that it is critical to have balance because it is so easy to burn out. And when you are doing it yourself, in private practice, which, we're talking, or I'm speaking to right now, or actually in a job, anything, right? Sometimes even more in social services when you're seeing 3 times what we're talking about. But to whatever one's medium is, if you don't know what it is, to explore and play and create things that you're interested in, so that you can create a space for your life. A lot of art therapists say, so when I was a designer, I never really cared what I was creating. I just wanted to create. And when I was a designer, I was very lucky to be able to create a lot of things. And excuse me. And when I became an art therapist, it really inspired me to go back to my own art, because I was being with people. And so many people say when they go into this field, they stop creating. And for me, it made me do more. And and it's been such a gift.
Yeah, it can go either way, right? I feel like I talked to some therapists and even myself, where it's like an ebb and flow of creative periods of time. Before I went out and opened my own practice, I had a studio for several years, and I was in a shared space. But I had my own, studio space within the shared space. It was like a co-op kind of situation. And I created a lot of work during that time, but it was during a job that wasn't clinical. I was doing art enrichment with children on the autism spectrum in the school system. And I was using my therapeutic skills and
right.
but I didn't have all of the other pressures that come in a clinical job. And obviously I wasn't working with kids when school was out of session. And it gave me a lot of time and emotional space to be able to create. And then when I pivoted to have my own, I couldn't keep both places operational. So I left the studio space to have the office, and I create here sometimes, but not nearly as much as I did back then.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, I mean, people, I'm sure that has been true of me as well. I've painted in a studio. I was actually just painting at the Art Students League, which is a place where they have classes in New York. I did that for about 5 years. I painted with a group of friends who had been from my
Mm.
design field for about 10 years. I actually paint now with a group of friends that I've had for many years. On Zoom, we get together and sometimes we work simultaneously, sometimes we chat, but it has helped all of us through the pandemic to be able
Mm.
to not be isolated, and to create a structured time when we do create. And
Mhm.
that's been very holding. Um,
Mm.
yeah, for me,
So
the struggle
important.
has, yes, for me, the struggle has been a little bit that this is my home studio and now it's my home studio office. So I have to be much neater than here than I want to be, and I have to clean up after myself, which is,
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, organized. My office is very kind of like holding space, and my studio is often a mess, and it isn't now. So,
Yeah. No, the difference between the environment, right? You're
right.
bringing people in, you want it to be organized so that everything is accessible to them.
Mhm.
Where if it's just your space, it doesn't matter how messy it is, you'll figure it out. Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful. So, Linda, what do you think you said you decided to transition into the full-time practice, and you were able to gain 5 new clients. When you decided to leave and make this transition, did you change your marketing strategy up at all? Or was it just that you had, because you'd been out there in practice for 10 years, that um, you were turning people away before because you didn't have room?
Um, I would say both. I don't know that I changed. So the month before um, I left, like I said, a lot of colleagues, if you talk to people, I don't know what it's like there, but here, many people are full.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I was always full, so I did not have the capacity to respond to listservs that I'm on or to accept clients that people were referring. So part of it was that, and I want to say, interestingly, and I can't remember if I had transitioned to my new website. I actually had a website, which I did, as I mentioned, for about 10 years, and it was mine. And there was some changes with the SEO and problems that are not worth getting into. And so I decided to create a new website, hired a designer to work with, and that was really pivotal and different. I'm so much happier with my site now. It's maybe been up for 3 months.
Mm.
So it may be that having that new site made a difference for a couple of people coming on. It also was, like I said, that I started responding to things where I wasn't able to, or people would be asking, are you available? And I would be able to say yes. So I think the building of our relationships over a long period of time is really important. And
Mm.
also training, if you look, you were reading about some of my trainings that some sounded familiar to you and some didn't. And I'm on listservs of all of these different trainings, and I have gotten referrals of people who have come from all of them, as well as peer supervision groups that I'm in. Of course, clients and psychiatrists and doctors, but these relationships that we build, and so people go, "Oh, I know you. I've trained
Mhm.
with you, or we've collaborated, or." And so I trust you.
Mhm.
So I think that is part of it. I have to say, since my and we've talked about this because I'm looking at what to do with social media. I am a little bit of a dinosaur with all of that. So I'm trying actively to start posting on my Art Therapy NY Instagram, which I've had for 10 years, but never used really until a month ago. And my my Facebook page. I'm trying to start posting, and also on I have a Linda Turner Art page, which is just art, and so I sort of I'm trying to post on those so that there's a flow between. So those things I'm hoping will help to make a difference. And if I may, I know you said that it's been a useful tool for you, Instagram. So I'm listening to you as a model.
Yeah, but I think that that's inspiring too, to know that, hey, even if you are intimidated by social media, it is possible to have a full practice without having to utilize those methods. You've been doing it thus far without, so I'm sure other people can replicate that.
Absolutely. And I want to express incredible gratitude for the, for this. And I also think, to some of the points you were saying before, I'm not looking, many people in our field, we're not looking to create a following of 50,000 people, right? We're looking to do service to a limited group of people and to be able to have them heal or, shift or grow in the ways that they want, and then to have them move into their lives and bring other people in. And so we're not looking at big business, right? So there are many roads to this, right? I'm also sort of finding it fun and challenging to do this because I am a little bit of a dinosaur with it. So it's a little bit exciting, but I actually absolutely think that there are many ways of building. And I when I was at FIT, we would do a lot of workshops, and one of the workshops was on networking.
Oh.
And it was interesting because I did it a couple of times with a colleague who had gotten every job she had ever gotten from reaching out in an advertisement. And I had gotten every job I had ever gotten from somebody recruiting me or knowing them, that kind of thing, right? Except for maybe one. And so we were talking about this, and she created this structured PowerPoint of like lowest hanging fruit and how to, do the networking thing. And I had them play games of getting to know you, right? And so, we talk about that, like, it's really both of those things, right? It's an integration of knowing people, being curious about people, sharing, learning, engaging. Luckily I love people, and I know you do too, right?
Yeah.
And in this field you kind of have to, right? So talking and listening to people in the world, and not necessarily in your field.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Getting outside the bubble is good.
Right. So so I just wanted to mention that, because I think that that is the other way, right? If you're not doing the social media, it's who are you communicating with? Who are you engaging with?
Yeah, I think that's really important. Networking is a big part of my marketing strategy in my business too. And I create spaces for people to network, and hold space for networking meetings and things like that. And then in addition to just continual nurturance of relationships that I've built over the years and maintained. But I think that is like almost easier than some other things, like giving speeches or, speaking in front of a group, which can be great, right? Like doing a local event where you're talking about art therapy and mental health and stuff. but networking one-on-one or in smaller groups of people where it really allows you to develop a certain level of intimacy that can't be from that kind of observation piece. It can't really happen. Um, I think that's powerful because one of the things you kept saying is like somebody trusts you, they trust you enough to refer to you. And when we think about the marketing pyramid of what helps somebody actually come into your business, it's like, well, do they know that you exist? Is there like an awareness that you're even out there? And now that they're aware of you, do they like you? Is there some likability there? And then do they trust you? And is somebody that they already trust and like and know advocating for you? Right.
Mm,
And that's where the referral piece comes from. It's that other source. Um, and that becomes really powerful. And all of a sudden, people are coming to you because somebody else advocated for you, somebody that they trusted.
right.
Um,
Right. And yeah, I love what you just said. That is such a beautiful and succinct way of speaking to how it happens.
mhm.
And yeah,
And
yeah,
that takes time. That takes time as we're building these businesses. Relationship building takes time, and nurturance. Like we have to continue to connect with the people that we meet. Um, so making that intentional time, which it sounds like you do a lot of, and whether that's your self-care group and painting, or it's case consultation group, or connecting with the people in the training programs that you've participated in. All of that counts.
yes, yes. Beautifully said. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if there was any like simple words of advice that you would give to other therapists that were considering going to start their own practice, what would you share from your career counselor perspective?
Um, to think it through,
Mm,
right? To do your research and to create a plan,
mhm,
right? Is and then jump in,
mm,
right? A clinical supervisor of mine many years ago in graduate school, Stephanie Gorski, I ran into her in the street when I was thinking about private practice.
mm.
And I said, what do I do to start? And she said, just say you're in it and you will be. And I took that to heart. Like it was like, just own it
Mhm.
and build from there. Right now, that also meant make sure you have insurance, malpractice insurance, right? So you really need to plan and think, but there's also, say you're in it.
I love
So
that. I just wrote that down.
yep.
That's a beautiful, beautiful piece of advice.
Mm,
Um, yeah, thank you so much.
yeah,
If
thank you.
oh yeah, if listeners wanted to learn more about your practice, and if they're in the New York area and they want to attend a potential workshop in the future, which hopefully, I'm like knocking on wood here, hopefully we get into a position where we're better able to meet in groups in 2022. Where can they find you?
So my website is www.arttherapyny.com. And my Facebook page is Art Therapy NY, and my Instagram is Art Therapy NY.
Okay.
Keep it very simple.
No, that's great. Really great. I think that was awesome advice from the marketing person all those years ago to claim that. Right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being willing to talk with me today. And I'm excited to share our conversation with listeners.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Creative Psychotherapist podcast. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation between Linda and I. I really appreciated how she shared how she was able to make her private practice work for her and support her through different seasons of her career. And I hope that that inspires you to think about how yours can do the same for you. And I really also appreciated how she continually brought the conversation back to this idea of trust and trusting in yourself that you're able to do this, trusting in your own value and your worth. And yeah, so I hope you appreciated the conversation as well. Don't forget to tune in next week where we'll be sharing an episode with art therapist Angel Duncan. And that will be a one-on-one conversation with her and how she has kind of created accidental or unintentional private practice in a variety of cities where she's lived as a result of speaking and doing community education and raising awareness about art therapy and the work that she does with older adults with neurocognitive impairments. So you might want to stay tuned and check that out next week. It'll air on the 17th of November. And I look forward to talking with you then.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Creative Psychotherapist. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For show notes, downloads, and additional resources, head over to the website at www.creativeclinicianscorner.com.